Hello, sweet souls. How are you? How are you doing? How are you feeling? How's everything going? I hope you're well. This is going to be a slightly more casual video. I want to tell some stories, but what I really want to do is tell you how to hear your soul's voice and how I heard my soul's voice. And so I'm cozy, I have a candle lit, I have a cup of tea, and we're just going to chat. This is something that I share sometimes in ceremony when you're in ceremony with me. And I thought it was really important for me to come in today and really speak about the soul from what I hear from the soul's perspective. And if you hear the call before we do, I'm just going to take a couple deep breaths and drop in. So, breath number 1, in through the nose and out through the mouth. Breath number 2, again in through the nose and out through the mouth. And with breath number 3, let's imagine the breath going all the way down to your base and then out through your crown. Breath number 3. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes and you can join me here. Thank you. Thanks for dropping in with me. That is like, thank you for dropping in, really, because that is a practice that I use. The breath is a way that I get into and surface the soul's voice. And it's also a way that I surface the voices of my ancestors when they are in collaboration with me. They're always with me. They'll probably be with me today when I'm recording this video. So, how to hear your soul's voice? Well, I think I want to begin by saying, what is the soul's voice? I speak about it a lot, and I want to make sure that people understand it from my perspective. And I want you to know that everything I share is my perspective. Take what feels good. I trust you to know you, and you decide what is true to you, and then leave all the rest, right? You're a sovereign being. You're a sovereign soul, just like I am. I'm sharing my journey. I'm sharing what's happened to me, and I'm offering this concept of the soul to others so that they may use it as it feels good to them. So first, what is a soul's voice? Okay. The soul's voice is the calm and all-knowing wisdom, and it can be a language that surfaces from within when you get quiet and listen. It's wisdom, and it can be language. So when I say the soul's voice, I mean the language that surfaces from within. I also consider it the language of love and compassion that's buried deep within, that we must do some work to allow to surface. Now, we didn't always have to do that work, but we have been conditioned by lots of things in society to ignore that voice that's within. And so, in order to hear it, we need to put in a little effort to get silent and still. Simple. And also not so simple. So, I understand and can relate to how difficult it is to hear the soul's voice sometimes. But once you start to hear it, it is with you all the time. My soul is with me all the time, ever present, because I move through this life a lot slower, a lot more intentionally. I take a lot of pauses. I listen very closely. Now, the soul is this sort of divinity, this essence that is a part of us that takes hold in the body, but also is a part of all that is and is a part of everyone. So the soul is this essence that moves through us and connects us to everyone. So we are individual souls. And also, I like to think of us as one big soul as well. I know that that's a lot for some people. I can hear that that's a lot for some people to understand, to think that you are not an individual with your own mind, your own identity, your own personality. You are all those things, right? You are all those things. And also, there is an essence that moves through you that can guide you from a place of love and compassion and creation and abundance and sweetness. And that is connected to everything, to everyone. Sometimes when I'm speaking, you'll see me close my eyes and you'll see me move over to the left. Sometimes that is just me hearing. Sometimes it's hearing my soul, and sometimes it's hearing the ancestors. So I want to just make sure, I don't think I've ever explained that in a video. So the soul's voice is the ringleader within you, if you allow it, if you so choose. That really is up to you. That's not up to me. The soul is the ringleader of all the voices within me now. And there are lots of voices within you. There are lots of voices without you as well, right? There are lots of people and beings and systems telling you who to be, what to do, got it, get it. There are a lot of expectations outside of you. When you start listening to the soul, most of those things fall away. You let them wash over you like water, right? They just kind of wash away. They can exist, and you just kind of let them wash away. So the soul's voice is the ringleader, and there are lots of other voices within you, and I just want to talk about a few of them right now. So there is the voice of the mind, which I kind of wrap up in personality, the ego, the identity, and this voice is your brilliance, right? It is the voice that appears to be logical, the voice that wants to keep you safe, the voice that worries about you, the voice that worries about everything. And it has its place. Most of us live from that voice. It's cool, it's fine. It's just one voice within. There are other voices within as well. There is the voice of the heart, your emotions, your feelings, right? That's a very strong voice within. It's one that we often diminish, but increasingly, especially as we learn to balance all the different energies within us, it becomes stronger, right? There is the voice of the witness or your awareness, your consciousness. And this voice to me is the witness, the noticer, the pattern maker to the understanding of things. But they just kind of witness and they have less of an opinion. That's how I hear this voice. It notices, the witness. Then there is the pain body, right? And that is the body, your hands, your legs, your limbs, your core, your cuerpo, your core, right? And there's pain in your body. Sometimes your ankle hurts. Sometimes your hand hurts. Sometimes you have a headache. And that's the body using its voice to speak to you in some way, right? To say, I'm hurt, I'm sad, get me out of here, this is uncomfortable, whatever it is. So we've talked about the mind, we've talked about the witness, the awareness, we've talked about the heart and its feelings, we've talked about the body and its pain. There's another voice, and I distinguish this from the soul's voice. Others may not, and that's okay. But there is the intuition and its senses. I separate that. The intuition, our intuition, uses our senses, all of our senses, to detect, to take in information, usually information that's not said, right? So we might hear something, we might feel something, we might see something, and the intuitive voice might process that in a certain way. The soul's voice is the ringleader, so it allows space for all these other voices to have a say, and it takes it all in, it pauses, and it moves you from a place of love and compassion. Love and compassion for self, love and compassion for all that is. I love the soul's voice. I began hearing it nearly 10 years ago. And I will say, when I first started hearing it, I was very uncomfortable using the word soul. I use the word inner voice, and you can use that voice, that word, if it makes sense, the inner voice. That's how I learned it. I learned it as an inner voice that was so loving and so kind and so compassionate. But eventually, when that voice began to deliver information, to channel messages from within me and from without me, I realized that it was my soul, because it always moved from a loving and compassionate place. Always. We have forgotten that voice. We don't show ourselves love. We don't show ourselves compassion. And if we did, this planet would be a little bit of a different place. But it's changing, it's shifting. There are people like me and others, probably you, who are hearing that other voice, that inner voice, that soul's voice, and who are ready to surface it. I want to speak about how it surfaced for me. Let's see. So, gosh, I first started hearing it nearly 10 years ago. It's no coincidence that I began drinking cacao nearly 10 years ago when I was running a food business. I wrote a few cookbooks, and when that was sort of when I started hearing the soul's voice. They are very linked. I have a whole course, Heal Your Life and Hear Your Soul with Ceremonial Cacao, because they are so linked. It is a beautiful tool from Mother Earth that we can use to surface the soul's voice. We don't need it to surface the soul's voice, but I find it to be a really beautiful tool for that. A gift, really, from the grandmother, from the planet, for us to use to surface the soul's voice. So about 10 years ago, I started drinking cacao, and I really was doing a lot of work to go inward. And it started like it probably starts for many people. For me, I'm a writer. At my core, I'm a writer and a storyteller. So I was journaling every day, writing notes to myself. And what I noticed is the first words that I would get out on the page were kind of like vomit on the page. They're just like everything that was in my mind, everything that needed to get out, everything that I was angry about or upset about or fearful about, all the things, right? But eventually I started asking myself questions. I would write a question and I would get still and I would ask the inner voice or the soul's voice for an answer. And I first began seeing the replies behind my eyes, because I would close my eyes. And for me, it like wrote on lined paper in cursive, sort of like the sort of writing that some of us learned. And it would say yes or no. It'd be like simple answers. And eventually it got a little bit more drawn out, and it would be sentences. To hear this voice, to begin to hear this voice, we get very quiet and we ask, and we say the first word that comes to the surface. That's it, right? And we follow that loving and compassionate response. So I started by journaling and asking questions, and then I heard the soul invite me to go out into nature by myself. And I was like, what are you talking about? I live in a house. I go shopping to malls. I like to be out at boutiques. Like, I like to be out in the world. I don't like to be in nature by myself. Certainly not by myself. I go to the gym to walk. I don't go out into nature. There's bugs and there's snakes and there's all these things. But I heard the soul invite me. The soul said, we want you to go into the woods. And they invited me on paper as I was journaling. And so one day I put on my hiking boots and I started walking through a forest, a beautiful forest by where I used to live on the East Coast. And I'm walking and I heard the soul say, welcome. In my head, not aloud. I heard the soul say, welcome. We're so glad you're here. This is why we wanted you to be here. We wanted you to hear us most clearly. Because sometimes when you're in your life, in your house, in your job, at an office, it's very difficult to disentangle all the voices, to take the threads apart, right? But in the woods, I could hear it so clearly. And I got very teary and we started to have a conversation and I was able to ask it questions and it was loving and beautiful. And then eventually, sort of the next step was I started talking to my soul like I'm talking to you. And I would get still and quiet, whether it be in a meditation or an energy session or on the yoga mat. And I would just say, sweet soul, what do I need to know today? And there'd be times when I was talking to the soul for 5 minutes, times when I was talking to the soul for 45 minutes, literally having long back and forth conversations, times when others were guiding me to hear that soul's voice. And that's what I do now in my one-on-one sessions. I guide people to hear that soul's voice. I ask them questions to help them surface that wisdom that's within. And that was the most beautiful time because the soul had so much to say. Not just so much wisdom, but the soul is able to hold you through tragedy, through change, through transformation, through complicated feelings, through choices that you have to make or you're on the precipice of making. And so I would just ask my soul, what do I need to know about this decision today? Or what do I need to know about this feeling I'm having today? Where is this feeling in my body? How do I integrate it? How do I allow it? And the soul always told me that we allow it, we express it. That is how we allow it. That is how we let the feeling integrate. And so there were times when I was having these daily discussions with my soul. I was holding myself through this. In the same way that you might go to a therapist to hold you through complex feelings, in the same way that you may use a system like internal family systems to understand all the people in your life and what they have to say, like I was working with me, my sweet soul, to understand what I was moving through. And so that is the sort of process I went through over 10 years. And then eventually I heard that I was going to share this with more people as they hear the call, as it feels good to them. So I like to think of the soul as a representation of your aliveness. It's your muse. It's your love for you. It is always loving and compassionate. If you hear something negative, that is not the soul. Promise you. I promise you. That may be the mind or some other energy coming in and judging you or critiquing you, because the soul doesn't judge. I want to make sure I say that again. The soul does not judge you or judge others. It may discern what is right or wrong for you in this moment or the next moment, but it doesn't judge, right? And when you live from that soul essence, from that soul's voice, you yourself begin to judge, critique, scold, disdain others less, right? So, or hold disdain for others in different ways, right? So that's a lot about the soul's voice. I want to tell you about how I work with her today, how I work with we today. You know, the soul's voice is a we, right? Because it is representative of all the different voices inside of you and all the other souls that are on this planet. And so when it speaks, it will often speak from the we perspective. And it may not do that at first. It may take some time, but eventually it gets there. And that is just a beautiful state to be in when we move from a place of all, of one, right, versus the I. So today, I have a morning practice with my soul's voice. I always ask my soul's voice what I need to know today. Sometimes when I have to make decisions or I'm out in the world, I will pause and ask the soul's voice what I might need to know about a situation. I may find some stillness sometime during the day, pause for a few moments and get quiet with myself. And this world is not conditioned to allow the pause, right? Everybody wants you to move fast and make decisions fast and not hesitate. And I get that. And also, there is another way, right? There are times when we move fast, and there are times when we invite the pause, when we need to feel into things. And where I was fearful of asking for that before, now I ask for it readily. So if I have to make a decision about something, I will tell the person, especially if it's a collaboration, I think I need to feel into this. Allow me to pause and I'll get back to you, right? And I'll sort of let the soul speak to me and I'll allow my emotional wave with the soul, allow the soul to hold whatever emotions I'm feeling about the decision or the endeavor or the project, right? And then come back and make a decision from a far more centered, far more informed, far more intelligent place. I think of the soul and its voice as my highest self. Not everyone does, and that's okay, right? But when you're in that loving and compassionate energy, when you allow it, you can move from that place, that entity, that energy that sees all that is for you, that sees potential and prosperity and adventure and love, so much love. So that is the soul's voice. And that's when I talk about the soul's voice, that's what I mean. My soul's voice has now sort of like gone through different phases and has allowed me to hear really clearly. And so now when I speak to my soul, sometimes I hear my soul and sometimes I hear other energies. And my work has evolved. I've done a lot of ancestral work, a lot of ancestral healing work, both in real life and in the astral plane. And I see listening to the soul's voice as a sort of process or phase process to actually unfolding or opening up to your magic, whatever that is. And my magic is clairaudience. My magic is being able to commune with the ancestors, being able to hear them, being able to hear a collective of ancestors. I hold now one-on-one sessions for people to bring them guidance from my soul and the ancestors. I do this also in ceremony, in ritual, where I bring in the guidance and I can hear them, I can feel them, I can sense their presence. And I do a lot of dream study as well. The soul sort of graduated me into doing a lot of dream work. So I do a lot of work, working with the soul, working with my highest self, working with ancestors, receiving dreams or visions or ideas of what might come to be in this timeline or another. The soul's voice has opened me up to that. And I talk a lot about that in some of my courses, and when I work with people one-on-one. I began witnessing the magic of my life when I gave my soul's voice permission to exist, when I named it, when I prioritized it, when I allowed stillness for it to speak. And I think that does that feel like enough for today? I've always come back to my soul's voice. Always come back to my soul's voice. I guess, no, so I'm here to give you a few examples of what I mean by opening up to the magic. Okay, so there was one time many years ago where I was on a yoga mat, and at the end of my yoga practice, I would ask the soul if there was anything that I needed to know. And in this position, in Shavasana, prone on the mat, instead of hearing my soul, I actually started receiving visions of people who had passed away, and they talked to me. In one particular vision, two energies came forward to tell me that I was going to be okay. They were two past family members, and I thought it was strange and unusual, and yet 12 hours later, something major happened in my life, and I thought I was not going to be okay. But then I remembered that morning that my ancestors had told me I was going to be just fine. That's an example of how the soul's voice opens you up to your magic. So another gift or opportunity that came my way, I'm thinking, is many years ago, I was running a food business before I was doing this work. And I was about to take all the steps to open a gourmet grocery store. It was about 6 months before COVID. And I was about to take out all the loans, and I had pitched the city, and everything felt a little off. I didn't know what it was, but I kept moving forward. I was like, I'm going to do this no matter what. Nobody's going to stop me. And I'm driving down a street, and I look over to my right, and there's a person in a car, a young man stopped at a stop sign, and we catch each other's eyes. And he looks at me, and I look at him, and then he proceeds to drive right into me and total my car. I was fine. We both got out, and he said he didn't know what had happened, that he had seen me. But that was a bit of magic, because I decided, I kind of was like, how did this happen? I started noticing, and I decided to pause. I stopped everything, and I got silent for 4 months. Little did I know that COVID was brewing and about to open, and I would have never been able to really make this store a success with everything shut down in the US. But after those 4 months, an offer came into me to build what I was going to build on someone else's dime with a lot lower risk. And I started the process of helping them build it as a consultant. And as I moved through it, I learned, oh gosh, I don't want to do this anymore. There's something else out there for me. It's not this. I've taken this work as far as it can go. What a gift. Because COVID, the pandemic unfolded, and I didn't want to own a grocery store in the city in the middle of a pandemic. And I started hearing that I was meant to do soul-oriented work or inner reflection-oriented work. And then I put it all together because more magic just started opening to me. So that feels like plenty, I think. I've been going for like 30 minutes. I really wanted to tell you this story. Everything comes back to the soul's voice. If you subscribe to this channel and stick around, I will teach you how to hear your soul's voice, and I will show you even more magic that unfolds the more you listen to that voice. My whole life has changed. I'm in a completely different place. I moved through trial after trial after trial, tragedy after tragedy, lost a lot of people in my life, and went inward and changed my entire life. Moved to a different part of the US, and I'm starting over. And part of that is sharing my story here with you. So that's how you hear the soul's voice. That's how I heard the soul's voice. And increasingly, I will take you through practices to do this. And I will tell you more stories of the sweetness of life and the magic that unfolds when you listen to your soul. All right. Thanks so much for being here, and I will be back soon. Subscribe if you want to get more videos. Bye-bye.